The shipment arrived on a stormy night, unannounced and unmarked. Nurse Kelly was at the front desk, her shift nearly over, when she heard the heavy thud of boxes being dropped at the hospital entrance. No one expected deliveries at this hour, especially at Millhaven General, an old, crumbling facility nestled on the outskirts of town, barely clinging to its reputation. As she approached the pile of crates, she noticed a faint smell, a strange blend of sweetness and decay that made her stomach churn. The labels on the boxes were crude and minimal, simple symbols etched in red ink, some that looked like circles and others jagged lines. The eerie quiet around them seemed to darken the hallway. A janitor who had been sweeping nearby glanced at the boxes, shook his head, and muttered something under his breath before turning back to his work, leaving Kelly alone with the delivery. When morning broke, the boxes were brought into the cafeteria by the kitchen staff. They were packaged as small snack kits, crackers, cheese, some kind of cured meat, a brightly wrapped candy bar. The hospital administration had received a note with the crates stating that the kits were a donation from an anonymous benefactor for the patients. The staff was thrilled. Most patients at Millhaven didn't get much in the way of treats, and the colorful packaging brought a hint of cheer to the dull hospital halls. The first patient to try one of the snack kits was Mr. Grayson, a frail old man in room 212 with a reputation for unsettling fits of laughter at night. He opened the package eagerly, his shaky hands barely able to unwrap the contents. But as he took his first bite, Kelly saw his face change. He chewed slowly, his eyes widening as his mouth curled into an odd, hungry smile. He devoured the rest of the snack in silence, his eyes fixed on some point far beyond the walls of his room. By the next morning, rumors had started to spread. Patients who had eaten the snacks were behaving strangely. They spoke of voices whispering in the night, shadows that seemed to move on their own. A young girl in the pediatric ward was found clutching her empty snack box, staring at the wall, mumbling about people in her room that the staff couldn't see. Kelly's unease grew when she saw Mrs. Dougherty, a long-term patient with dementia, gnawing frantically at an empty snack wrapper, tearing at it with desperate fingers. Her mouth was smeared with a sticky, reddish substance from the kit, and her eyes were vacant, hollow. Kelly tried to pull the wrapper from her hands, but Mrs. Dougherty's grip was ironclad, and she screamed, a high, piercing wail that echoed through the ward and sent chills down Kelly's spine. That night, Kelly couldn't shake the haunting image of Mrs. Dougherty's bloodshot eyes and the garbled words she'd whispered through cracked lips. "They're here. They're feeding on us." Desperate to understand what was happening, Kelly stole one of the snack boxes from the kitchen and took it home. She examined the contents carefully under the dim light in her apartment, her hands trembling. Inside, each component looked harmless enough: a piece of cheese, a strip of meat, crackers, a chocolate bar. But something about them was off, as though they weren't meant to be eaten by anyone living. Ignoring the warning prickling at the back of her mind, she took a bite of the meat. Almost instantly, a bitter, metallic taste flooded her mouth, and her vision swam as nausea overtook her. She staggered to the sink, gagging, feeling a strange pressure building at the base of her skull, like a voice clawing its way to the surface. When she looked up into the mirror, her reflection seemed wrong. Her own eyes stared back, but there was a darkness in them, something that wasn't her. And behind her reflection, faint but unmistakable, she saw shadowy figures moving, their forms twisted, reaching toward her. She blinked and they were gone, but the cold sensation of their presence lingered. Kelly stumbled back to the hospital the next day, her mind foggy, her body aching. She tried to warn the other staff members, but her words came out slurred, jumbled. Her supervisor dismissed her, suggesting she take a break and get some rest. Over the next week, Millhaven General was overtaken by an oppressive gloom. Patients and staff who ate the snack kits grew pale and gaunt, their eyes losing focus, their skin cold and clammy. Whispers filled the halls, conversations no one could fully understand, voices calling to each other from empty rooms, and always the craving, the insatiable hunger for more. Kelly started to notice strange, unexplainable marks on her own skin, dark, bruise-like spots that appeared and disappeared, spreading like spider veins beneath her flesh. One night, she felt a burning sensation on her arm and looked down to see one of the symbols from the snack box etched into her skin, as though carved there by invisible hands. Finally, Kelly gathered the courage to confront her supervisor and begged them to stop distributing the snack kits. But her supervisor's face was blank, his eyes glassy. He turned slowly to her, his voice a monotone whisper as he said, "It's too late, Kelly. We're theirs now." The hospital lights flickered, casting eerie shadows down the corridors as Kelly backed away, her heart pounding. She could feel them, the shadows, the beings from the snack boxes, closing in around her, their whispers growing louder, drowning out her thoughts. She ran, but each hallway stretched endlessly, twisting and darkening, trapping her in a maze of empty rooms and ghostly figures. The next day, Millhaven General was silent. The city declared it a closed facility, its doors locked and barred. But if you press your ear to the walls, some say you can still hear faint whispers echoing through the abandoned halls, pleading voices from those who linger within. And in the darkest corners, the snack boxes lie waiting, still fresh, still sealed, the promise of a meal for those brave or foolish enough to open them.